This is the.
Hello, I'd like to convene the permanent manager committee meeting. We're going to start the meeting at 6 minutes after 2. Clerk Flintoff, would you mind calling the roll? Or can I do it?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Call the roll. I'm just doing it in order. Supervisor Carey.
Present.
Treasurer Yeaple.
Present.
Clerk Flintoff.
Present.
Trustee Riser is absent. Trustee Brandt, present. Trustee Noel is absent. Trustee Monk.
Present.
Okay, I just want to state, we did get information from Trustee Noel that she is testing positive for COVID. So she probably won't be able to make tomorrow's meeting either. So.
And was there any info from Riser about not being able to attend in terms of excusing his absence?
I
heard nothing.
No.
No.
Okay,
That hurt.
excused or unexcused, okay.
yeah, I didn't get-
Sorry. There he is. It's calling in. Sorry.
Okay, so let's move on with the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed changes?
We need to include Aurora, HR generalist on this as president.
It will go in the minutes. I think
Okay.
what we've been doing is also present.
Oh, I better take.
Christie and Aurora as present.
Oh, yes.
Okay, adoption of the agenda. Does anyone want to make any changes to the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second?
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. Okay, so we're moving forward with continuing on the job description.
Public comment first.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Obviously, I want to move this along. Very sorry. I don't see anyone in the township hall. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to comment?
Yes, we have Jonathan Greenberg. Go ahead, please.
Hey, two things I'd like to cover. First, I do believe that an unexcused absence 3 times in a row can lead to double secret probation. It has in the past, so I would warn all staff members. Actually, the reason I wanted to comment is because I am concerned that even today, after everything we've experienced, the Zoom account being used is one of a personal account in the organization. I've recommended, I think any IT organization knowing what has happened in the past here at Scio Township should be using a resource account specifically assigned to that resource, the laptop. If you'd like help setting that up in Outlook, I'd be more than happy to provide instructions or guide someone through it. But after everything that's happened, the fact that we're still using a personal account to host Zoom meetings is unacceptable. Thank you. Have a great meeting.
Thank you,
like-
Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And I will forward that email you sent to our IT people. I know Christie, you'll follow up with them on that.
Yeah,
Great.
Is that accurate when it's a personal account? Who's personal?
Right.
It's not,
my account is through the Scio Township.
there are no personal accounts. There are individual accounts with Scio Township. I think what Jonathan's talking about
I just,
is something different. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and just real quickly, a resource account is like an account for a loaner computer or a shared calendar. It's not for a person. These are not personal accounts. These are actual Scio accounts, but they are personal in that they are not a resource account.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, so this,
I don't see any other hands raised, Kathleen.
thank you. So let's start on the first agenda item. Approval of the minutes.
I want to thank Christy for filling in.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I know.
Would anyone like any changes to those minutes? Corrections, rather.
I think on. I think on F3, we're talking about the 8 to 4 versus the 8 to 5. I think as presented is fine, as long as we all have the understanding. I think we kind of, Kathleen, if I remember correctly, you kind of agreed to disagree, and we're okay with the,
No, it was fine with consensus. That's
yeah,
fine.
okay, great.
Which one was that?
The,
Because
the
since I wasn't
question,
here.
sure, we had a good
Yep.
discussion about, Kathleen had introduced the idea of having the person be required to be here from 8 to 5,
Oh.
understanding the office
Yep.
is open till 4, but just really for availability.
Yes, okay.
So, any other changes to the draft minutes? Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
If it's okay, I can second, even though I wasn't there. I think I can.
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Draft minutes approved. Thank you. Okay, let's get to the meat of it. F1, define the role and complete the job description. We've done quite a bit of work on this. And Aurora was kind enough to make some modifications and clean it up a little bit.
Thank you, Aurora.
In the work location, it still says 8 to 5.
Right, but yeah, I think for this meeting will go standard operating hours.
She made some very, very good updates and suggestions on the position summary.
Mm-hmm.
Did you all get a chance to read that?
Yeah, I thought it was much cleaner, Aurora, the position summary. And back to Jillian's other point, I do think it'd be good if we kind of that report, the work location and hours. If we could just say something like regular work location and hours. Be Scio Township Hall, 8 to 4. Understanding that, you know, the regular work is much more. There's a lot of, you know, maybe even just explicitly say plus, you know, evening meetings.
Typical.
Typical.
Typical township operating
Yeah.
hours.
Sort of minimum, sort of the minimum.
So I know we
working
had,
hours.
I know we had conversations about this position not to be misunderstood as a remote position.
Mhm,
So I put the language Township Hall. Is that
that's
good
good.
enough or,
I'd say Township Hall.
Yes,
That's where our meetings are unless we
okay,
declare some.
and we're gonna say regular hours. That's
if that's appropriate, Aurora.
Yeah, and if there's a format, I'll put that in there, but on site is what I was
Okay.
using previously.
Okay.
Great.
When I was, doing our posting.
Great.
Yeah, and I would like to propose that we change this to township manager. Sitting in on the attorney meeting last week, well, the operations meeting, but with the attorneys there, they both recommended having a township manager. We're just too large of a township now, and township manager does have other statutory duties. or statutes, in statute is referenced that a director of operations or a township administrator would not.
Such as?
Well, for one thing, the budget, it's the Uniform Accounts and a Budgeting Act, it states the supervisor or the township manager. And there's other references throughout statutes that talk about township manager, but it doesn't talk about township administrator. And David Rowley even said, you don't need an administrator, you need a manager. And this was what, 4 years ago? Oh, you weren't here. I'm sorry. I'm looking at you like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's
what was
okay.
the date? 2022 is when he left?
22.
Yeah. So I think we should seriously consider that. And it would also help, with everyone being very clear that the township manager runs the township and works for the board at the pleasure of the board. So this way it can buffer from, there would be a buffer between the board and the employees. And of course, we would still be involved with, the reports from the manager.
Comment on that, in looking back at statutes and a lot of the MCLs, there is no reference to director of operations. So I agree that we kind of came up with that, seemed right. So from that perspective, I get it. There's no, kind of created this name. The other is that's led to confusion for me is I've heard reference to an operations meeting. Now it happens here, and who does attend, quote unquote, the operations meeting?
Well, it's the three officers. Christine.
Right, it was a brand new thing.
Oh, this is a brand new thing.
Yeah.
I'll speak to that because I'm the
Okay,
one that.
it's a brand new thing.
She
Okay,
called.
good. I feel better.
She called.
This was something that I wanted, giving the role that I wanted consensus from the three officers that are in the building to have an understanding of what issues that I'm facing, that I need guidance on, that we can all, strategize together. And I thought if we met once a week, then we can keep everybody on the same page, and then I have an
Okay.
understanding of everyone's.
So-
There have been 2 meetings.
Yeah, we've had two,
It's
Okay,
been since November 20th.
but at
okay,
those
so
meetings
who
is
would be at those?
myself, Jessica, Aurora,
Really?
Jillian, and Ryan.
Okay. So I totally understand why you would want it and in your new role. So I don't quite understand the use of the word officers, though. I think in that.
I agree with
That's
you.
my word,
Okay,
so.
Okay, so that's your word.
Clerk,
It's ending up
supervisor.
showing up in a lot of people's vocabulary.
We are
And
all officers.
that, yes. So that's been confusing also to me. The use of the word officers is like, am I not? I guess I'm not because I'm not at that meeting.
Yes, you are.
No,
Okay. So for clarity, then, if I understand the use.
No,
of
yeah,
The
speak
operations
freely,
meeting,
for
no,
sure.
for the operations meeting, totally get that. Because having, for those that reside in the office, I think it's really good that you're kind of talking to one another and figuring out space, because I don't need to know what cube I'm in, it's not something I need to be aware of. So if we could at least get away from the word officer, unless we refer to all 7 as officer,
Agreed.
one or the other.
Agreed.
And then back to the title then, if we have someone by the title of Director of Operations, that would sort of lead to a bump up against calling that meeting an operations meeting.
Agreed.
So maybe we do need to go back to that title of manager, or what was the other one? I know at our first meeting, we talked about
administrator.
titles.
Administrator.
There was 3 different titles we were talking about. I know I made a mistake on it in my minutes, so it had to be corrected. So yeah, there were like 3 different titles we were talking about. And then we just said, okay, for the sake of discussing, we'll focus in on Director of Operations.
There was another reason we did.
Was
that.
there? Okay, remind me.
That reason was, Aurora pointed out that the discussion of what, we were looking for was not necessarily, somebody that had an existing job in local municipal government. And we were defining it as operational, a type of operation. And she suggested that for recruiting purposes,
Yes.
the title
Yeah.
Director of Operations would make a more broad
Mhm.
base to seek applicants.
I just didn't call that, I didn't call that now. Okay,
And-
so. Aurora, what, given Jillian's input, any more thoughts on title and recruiting and actually Christie's point too about the word operations? So that our vocabulary is
Mhm.
in sync.
Right, I know definitely there's been confusion. I know, as Jillian said, we do have the township manager title in place in a resolution even, I believe.
An ordinance, but we,
An ordinance.
An ordinance.
And then
Clearly-
administrator in a motion is what we have, so.
I
So-
thought we clearly said we were going to address that ordinance.
So to change, you thought to
Well,
change the ordinance.
Because of the job, we shouldn't have job descriptions in our ordinances.
That's
I
what we
agree.
discussed.
And that was the only one that was there, which is kind of weird,
Kind of oddball.
Okay,
but that's separate from having a
Aurora, will you
township
done
manager.
with your comments?
Yes, the only other comment I was going to make is, that whatever consensus is reached, by the board, we can update the title. So
Mhm.
whatever,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
whatever's decided.
Ryan, do you have any comments? I do have comments after you.
I was gonna say I would prefer to keep Director of Operations for some of the reasons we've stated before, which would be to recruit from a broader base, especially people that aren't necessarily exclusively government, current government employees. Additionally, I think it really addresses the fact that we're trying to become more of a organization focused on achieving and doing more for our residents. And we're not just looking to manage. Inherently, you have to manage as part of that or administrate as part of that. But the title and the way the job description so far has been set up is to be somebody who's empowering and doing. Not saying that an administrator manager can't do that, because that certainly can. But it's the direction of where I see the township going. I see that a lot of the rest of the board has stated publicly that they want the township to go in.
Okay. I was gonna go next, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I was not, included in any meetings with attorneys, so I don't know really what they said about this topic. Did they give a legal opinion that we should do that?
No.
Okay. Statutorily, there's nothing in any statute that I know of that says we must have the title manager.
No, you're correct.
Jessica?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think we've done a lot of good work on this job description, and I think I'd like to kind of button this up. I'm open to thinking more about title. I would say though, and Judy, thank you for the reminder of officer. I'm often making that correction, and I will do it more because I've always said that. But there's just such a long-standing history here of saying, well, we're not officers, we're trustees. I'm like, we're all officers. There's 4 offices. So, yes.
It's only been confusing for this year.
No, it's okay. And then on the manager versus director of operations versus administrator, there's one permissive statute in the Uniform Budgeting Act that mentions township manager. And And then the township, statute 41 says we may hire a manager and any staff needed to carry it out. So I think it's good that we are kind of defining what we need. I will say, I think, we can have whatever title we want with whatever level of responsibility, and we can build it in here. Like, the name isn't going to matter. We could call it a township manager, a township director, a township CEO. We could call it whatever we want and make it, but I'm thinking about who we want to recruit and the work we need to get done. My concern about township manager, city manager, county manager, that's kind of a very typical MPA, decades in the field, high pay. And that, I don't think we're gonna get people who roll up their sleeves and get the work done in the way that we want to. That is no criticism to that field, but it is a very narrow field, and that's why, like the city administrator or the city administrator of Ann Arbor, county administrator for the county, they both do great work. But the work we're asking somebody to do is really different. And I think sometimes when we say township manager, and particularly paired with, I think what was a mistake we made with the way that we recruited, is we wind up getting mismanaged expectations, where we get somebody who thinks that they're gonna have a staff to administer kind of a big, county city. And townships just don't, right? We've got not even 50 employees, and that's why so many townships don't have that kind of very highly paid manager, because there isn't the organization that typically goes with it. So again, I think it's good that I like director of operations. That is what, Diane Benson recommended. I like it better than township administrator or manager. But again, just want to encourage us to make this what we think Scio needs. There's nothing in the statute that requires or limits or even encourages us to have one type of position or another.
May I speak?
We have a free flowing conversation here.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I
I just
got-
wanted to give everyone a chance to state something.
Well, Ryan, you said something about, and Aurora, opening this up to all, even people who haven't worked in government. But people that haven't worked in government, they may not have the background or the knowledge of, because we're governed by law, by the state.
Sure.
And we even, we see this in committees too, that they don't seem to understand the role of the township board or whatnot. So we have to be very careful with that. And because that's gonna be a whole learning curve right off the bat, just for the government
For sure.
base.
Oh, yeah.
And I would really like to understand from the township attorneys why they recommend a township manager. What is the difference in their legal aspect than what we think?
Yeah.
I wasn't in that meeting, so I don't know what those attorneys said.
They said, well,
I don't know if it was a recommendation. I don't know what it was.
it wasn't a recommendation other than they said, of course, they're, well, I guess it was because,
So I'll just
The one-
report on what I heard from that.
But before you move
Yeah.
on, the idea that we're gonna have get a township legal opinion on this.
No,
Seems like a waste of money.
not a legal,
That's what you said.
well, their definition of a township manager. Same with Dave Crowley. He recommended he says, you do not, you're too large to have an administrator. You should have a manager. And why is that? What's the difference?
you know what I thought, and I'm thinking back to David Rowley's, because he had that whole report, and certainly we went through it, side by side, with David Rowley. On that was really, I think the it goes back to your early point about reporting to the board. Like, we really need to have a position that reports to the board and doesn't report to any one officer more than another. And I think a lot of David Rowley's frustration was coming from that, because that's also when we had a different supervisor's job description, a different things, and there were these dynamics going on there. And I mean, I saw day-to-day internally in the office as well as, you know, at the board meeting. So I do think that this reporting to the entire board is important, and it's hard to report to an entire board.
Correct, because that was the other thing that was pointed out, is that the board is only here together twice a month.
Exactly.
Maybe, you know, depending on if there's special meetings or not. So it's, and that's what, you know, even the recommendation regarding HR, reporting to the board is
Right.
covered. So that was, yeah, and that's,
But
you know, as we grow, we're gonna need more, well, more employees and whatnot. But yeah, the biggest concern is having just, you know, 1 or 2 people here in Township Hall, or 3, because there's 3 of us. And, you know, guiding that manager to do what they want. And we've seen before what happened in the past.
And I wonder, Jillian, if we
Or
might,
operations director of.
we might say something in qualifications. I do think qualifications are skills. I don't know, wherever it is. It would be good to have kind of a demonstrated ability to report to a board. That's a hard thing, you know, that's something that, whether it's the private sector or public sector, if you haven't ever worked for a commission or something, but somebody who knows how to do it.
It's very common in nonprofits. That's very traditional.
Yes,
Format in nonprofits is you are reporting to a board.
yes.
And it's very frequently listed in their
Yes,
qualifications
it
that they
is.
have demonstrated an ability to work
I think we should have that.
with
Yeah.
a nonprofit. I mean, it's just so critical in a nonprofit. Because you have an executive director reporting to usually boards made up of influential,
Mhm.
strong people, frequently wealthy.
Mhm.
And so you have to be able to have that strength. Now, I will say, for Kathleen's purposes maybe, is I think that this can be tabled. If we're just talking about title, if we could move past title and to actually crux of,
Because my next question is,
the crux
when
of
did
the
we
issue.
resolve this? But I have one more comment.
Okay,
In my experience with this township, I have problems with the word township in the title, and the reason that is, especially with township manager, because there is confusion generally of the differences between a general law township and a charter township. And those duties are greatly different in charter. And I believe we experienced that with Joyce Parker. And I thought I saw that she wanted to take her direction from one board member, the supervisor, not necessarily all. And that's not a good, that's not what, that's not how it works in the general law township. So I really wouldn't want the title to include the word township.
Something else I've noticed in my 5 years here, and it goes back to Judy's point, is when the word township is in the title, be it township administrator, township manager, something I've noticed is then they believe there's a perception that they are also officers. And I've experienced that, particularly as the township clerk, right? I'm the clerk, I'm a clerk, I'm the township clerk, like it all has different meanings, right? And so with township administrator, sometimes I think that there's a, I don't know, it becomes the township administrators, you know, the more like the city administrator sitting side by side with the city council.
And another thing I noticed is that from the prior manager, I thought, and we talked about this that a position that goes beyond the bounds of what their job duties and assignments are, that the previous manager took license with making board policy that I found objectionable. And so I thought that's what we were trying to address in this job description.
And we want to manage the expectations of the people we're recruiting,
Mhm.
which I think was part of the issue in the last. Both for
Okay.
Joyce and David.
So how do we avoid this person, this manager being, director of operations? Here day to day, they are to do their own thing and then report to the whole board without the board members interfering with their duties, or one or two board members interfering or directing them.
I will address that. Yes, you have a clerk, a treasurer, and a supervisor here Monday through Friday. My expectation is that this person clearly reports to the board statuses.
Mhm,
Mark Thompson did this very well, where he did Friday updates.
mhm.
And so unless there's something that comes up of an emergency nature, what would need to be brought before the entire board on a day-to-day basis? I can't think of too many.
Something emergency, I guess.
And we have a process for that requires two of the treasurer, supervisor, or clerk to sign off.
Emergency procurement, that's.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's any two officers of the board, not just
Yeah,
supervisor.
any two.
It's not just supervisor, clerk, or treasurer.
Right.
That's for purpose.
Could we get some language that said that any two of those positions on site could clarify any urgent items for director of operation?
I don't think it's necessary, Kathleen. I think that, certainly the board could do what they want to do. I think that I don't feel like that delegation of authority by the board to the supervisor, treasurer, and clerk is necessary. If we had a really effective director of operations, I think in particular with our HR processes, with those, since we have a HR person and we need to develop these things, those processes need to be refined and better built out by the board. But
So
short of that, I don't know what.
Supervisor
urgent would
Carey,
come
you
up.
brought that up as how would this position deal with the board? Are you seeing
Well-
something lacking or?
No, what Mark Thompson did was great as far, the weekly reports. No, my concern is that this person may end up being directed by one person or two persons that are in Township Hall every day. How can we avoid that? Because we saw that with Bryce Kelly, Jack Knowles, Bryce Kelly. Let's see. You mentioned just what you said about Joyce and Will, or supervisor, the supervisor and the manager.
So,
So there's two incidences, and it could be any of us that are here. So from the meeting the other day, which I found was very positive, making sure that, the board is, how do they say it? That, okay, the employees are, or whatever, we're just gonna use an example, director of operations, and anybody that's under the director of operations is to report to that director of operations, where the rest of us, we do our own duties, and we're not to interfere unless we have finances under you, assessing's under me, and treasury, but nobody is to interfere with utilities or parks and pathways because they report to the director of operations.
I don't know, I just went blank. I think it's incumbent upon the board to challenge this position if they did get direction from one person. That's our responsibility to make sure that,
Mhm.
that we as a board agree to the direction.
Yeah, and it's the person shouldn't take it if it's bad direction or inappropriate direction.
Go ahead, Judy.
Well, I think Gillian's point for consideration is that some of this happens by circumstance,
Mhm.
without it ever being intent, job description, rules, or whatnot. Because if this DOD walks out of his or her office and runs into Christie and says, "Oh, darn it, this is on my mind," or "this happened," you get engaged, and before you know it, a conversation happens. Now, if they think that that conversation can lead to, "Geez, that was a good suggestion, let's go do it," could someone draw a conclusion that that person had undue influence over telling him what to do? The answer is yes, they could draw that conclusion. Is it an accurate depiction of really what happened? The answer is no. And what I have found in my experience is that if you agree with their next step that they're going to take, you say, full speed ahead. Sounds good. If you don't like that direction and what step they've taken, you say, doggone it, that person had too much influence. So by the nature of our office being, some of us are inside and some of us are outside, some of that is going to naturally happen in the event, because you're in, the clerk, let's just leave, the clerk is present, the supervisor is present, and the treasurer is present in the office. So that is the nature of this beast. So I think what we need to do is build up our trust of one another, that if there's really a sense of an OMA situation, meaning I think of it as the 3 Ds when it comes to OMA, which is discussion, deliberation, and decision-making. Those are really the 3 things of the 3 Ds for OMA. So if it gets to the point where there's 3 of you or 2 of you are talking to this DOD, and it leads to discussion, deliberation, or decision, you owe that to the Board of Trustees to report on it.
Mhm.
And that has to be our guardrail. The guardrail of making sure one officer does not make his or her wishes known and driven down or pushed in a way that we all don't agree with. That's the guardrail. That person, and I would hold this DOD to that
Mhm.
standard. This DOD has to say, are you going into discussion, deliberation, or decision mode? And if they are, they owe it to this board, their boss, to report on that.
Excellent.
And I would look for that in the kind of person that we hire, that they know those standards. They know the OMA, and thus potentially that they've had experience in government. Gives them a little edge there, because otherwise they just have to read the document. But if any of us go into discussion, deliberation, and decision-making, that belongs in front of our residents, that belongs in front of the board, and I would hold this person responsible for doing that. And if I think they've overstepped by taking the treasurer or the clerk or the supervisor's role in directing them to do that, then it's my responsibility to call them on it. And that's, whether it happens in person or over the phone, those are the things we owe to our residents and OMA.
So I want to try to, like, move this discussion along, if that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
So we have a choice. We could vote on this now. We can delay it till but we have clearly expressed multiple times that we need to get this process complete. So might I suggest we talk about that at the next session?
It'll start.
Okay, so where are we then? Any other issues with the supplemental content that Aurora has provided?
The one I want to clarify on the front page, I don't want to belabor it, but the word supervisor / oversight. And I compliments to Aurora to sort through all of ours. But there is a clear difference between supervise and oversight. So I think we've been zeroing in on supervise.
Great.
Is that, that's been my understanding.
I would
Okay.
agree.
Oversight is that's like a dotted line relationship.
And that is a vestige of when the supervisor wanted to have that shared supervision with the administrator. And I agree with you. I prefer supervises and strike oversight.
Yeah.
Because that is a
Can't be
vestige
both.
from an unhelpful
Okay.
past.
One or the other, can't be both.
So supervision of, is that what we're?
That would be my
Is
preference.
that Kathleen?
No, I don't prefer that because we have a supervisor. And I don't want that to be confused.
Well, they report to,
Supervision
you know,
of-
what's the right word?
The verb of supervision.
Yeah, supervision of, I think we do need something at least to say there's
Yeah.
supervising.
I
Well, a
agree.
person has a right to know who they report to.
Yes,
What's another,
I think supervise is the appropriate term, Jillian. It should be a little s. It could say supervision of, direct supervision.
supervision of,
Okay.
Okay, so oversight is not clear enough.
I would prefer oversight.
Oversight, if someone said to me they have oversight over me, I say that's interesting but irrelevant.
Me
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can look over my shoulder.
whoa, Judy's
Like, it's like on, it's an
supervise.
omnipotent,
Exactly.
it's an omnipotent relationship. You gotta have oversight over the entire world,
Right,
okay?
I have oversight of that table right there.
No responsibility.
No,
Right.
but I see it.
Yeah, and this in no way, Jillian, gets into the supervisor role, but I do respect that.
Yeah, supervision of is.
Yeah,
different
okay,
than
you're good.
Supervises.
Yes, I'm great on that. Okay. That's good.
So let me just ask broadly, Aurora's added some content under most of these subcategories. Does anyone have any issue with any of those?
In looking at it, is it still a job that one person, I'm going back now like 2 meetings, is it still a job that one person can do?
If, in fact, we had the position of office coordinator filled and this job, I believe somebody could very well. do
Okay,
This job.
okay,
This is,
it's kind of like a
I think
test.
this is a very reasonable
Okay.
job.
Okay. Okay.
It's a good job.
Adding, actually,
No.
hey, put it out there, it might apply.
So
Yeah.
I don't hear any objections.
And process all necessary documents for fiscal payments to vendors.
Where are you at?
Yeah,
Yeah.
contract management.
I thought we got rid of that.
Yeah, I thought we got rid of it too.
Yeah, 2 meetings ago we did.
Contract management, last bullet point.
Yeah.
Page 9 of the packet.
It's in green, so maybe it got added back in.
Yeah, some of it, that's why I wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep my changes in red, because some of it I wasn't sure because we had gone a little bit back and forth, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely, anything anyone catches.
Thank you, Aurora.
Yeah.
Take that one
So
out.
I've taken it out.
Okay, thank you.
Aurora, I know when we had chatted briefly, you were a bit curious on asset and risk management, so it wasn't.
I did mention that, yes, on the,
Bottom on page
It is.
9.
yep. Asset and risk management section, so the only thing we had there was coordinate disposition of property. And I know one of the things that we haven't addressed yet that we, definitely need is, something to do with safety. And I know this is in the future, but like a safety committee. So that was my thought regarding risk management, safety, et cetera, that maybe we need to put something in there about.
I agree with you, and I'd say this has always kind of fallen on, me or Christy, whoever's, awake at the wheel.
Yeah.
And I would prefer it be on this position is a regular review, risk assessment, regular review of our insurance policies, and some responsibilities for MIOSHA. That is something that is kind of, I know it's sort of shared, right? Fire and utilities and those higher risk, but in terms of kind of overall for the township, something about risk management and assessment of our various insurance policies.
I get the insurance policy thing under asset and risk management. OSHA, I think of as an HR responsibility. Because
Got it now.
And the only reason why under safety, I know you probably mentioned MIOSHA, is that safety committee, in the future, hopefully,
Oh, sure.
that would fall under that, so,
It would, but ultimately, committee or no committee, ultimately, is that kind of, is OSHA a function we should have HR responsible for? I think that does. It can make sense. I'm open. I just want someone to be named responsible.
yeah, I like the insurance piece because that is of a contractual nature.
Yeah.
Insurance is of a
Okay.
contractual nature, so I line up with that one. Safety, I lean towards it being an employee because it's,
Okay.
it has to be a defensible policy. That's legal ramifications, and I think that resides closer to human resources.
Okay.
So
National
I-
Labor Relations Board, OSHA, those kinds of things for me.
Mhm.
so, I wrote down then what,
I don't know
Jessica
about
said,
others.
review of risk assessment policies.
Yeah, the insurance, I don't know the right words, but just insurance for the township and the risk assessment. And I don't,
Insurance is always about risk. Right?
yes, and then OSHA,
I left that.
I support that being under HR.
Yeah, in recruiting, when we use the phrase risk management, risk assessment, in recruiting, do people think of insurance or, because risk does have financial, it has broad understanding. What do you think in the recruiting world that means to a person?
I would say insurance, some type of insurance. Yeah.
Okay,
We good on that?
So we're good with review of risk assessment policies, or do you want me to put insurance policies?
I think you should include insurance, right? It makes it more clear for the,
I was
Make
gonna
it
say for
explicit.
insurance,
for the person.
Okay. Just phasing, not really. I'm not cheating on the test here.
So any other, just for the sake of trying to move this along, we can discuss any of these, for example, management of projects. There was additional stuff in there.
Thought it was good.
We have a project manager, so this management of projects, so that, shouldn't that be supervision of projects? Because then the project manager would be managing the projects. Or do we need to look at the project manager's job description and see how it complements or?
I like supervision of, I had oversee because I wasn't sure. So I kind of just put oversee and I thought, well, we'll discuss it here. So supervise the development of, is
Right.
that what we're saying?
I mean, I guess,
Supervision of projects, because if the project manager is doing the projects, but then you would need the operations to oversee that. Well, I think, isn't that on the first page? The project manager is under,
Yes.
yeah. So just because management of projects, it's like, well, who's really managing the project then? But
I would, go ahead, Brandon.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, reading most of this is they're definitely providing more of a managerial role or supervisory role to project management. They're also bringing in some of the high level like strategies and new best practices on how we should manage projects here, how we should track things. If we should maybe do things in Excel, some other software, they would maybe make recommendations around that.
mhm.
Whereas the actual project manager would be in charge of saying, okay, the person above me and I are gonna work together to implement like this new software, so that way we can get this project done more efficiently or track it better or whatever.
So we talked about the concept of project management, that in some ways department heads manage some of their own projects. And
sure,
the typical definition or thought on project manager is that they have assigned projects that they're responsible for. Versus what this says, it's more managerial and providing feedback on how to do that.
And so maybe I think of it more as kind of assignment of projects
Sure.
for
Yes,
advising, but across the areas, like for
Yes.
example, parks, right? There may be a project of Scio outside that our parks director is managing. I'm just saying that because I saw the sign, that our parks director is managing, but might need advice and support. From,
Wouldn't that be part of their level of supervision of parks and pathways?
yes, it would be, yeah,
Because if the person needs guidance or help or coaching,
yeah,
that would be part of supervision of them.
I think it is. So maybe it's not so much a separate.
See, this seems to be very, unlike the other categories. This one, we seem to have a lot more words underneath it.
That would be me.
Well, if you're a lawyer, you get paid by words, so
You and your
I
words.
respect that.
All these big ideas.
Yeah, that maybe you totally capture what we want. I just say less words. If I'm managing a project, ensuring that they're meeting the timeline that's a given, management of that project. So I don't know, I think less words on this one.
what would you suggest?
I think the bullet points, we could come up with maybe bullet point 4 and 5, which both start with the word ensure. Ensure completion of reports, status updates. Based on the project timeline, that can get rid of some of the wordiness, something like that.
But these words, frankly, Aurora, as we look at redoing job descriptions, I would like to see most of these bullet points in every single department has job description. Not that serious.
I know, but I also agree with you, so I'm kind of like,
Right, we're making a note. Add that to all job descriptions.
Because it's a very good summary of project management.
Yeah, right, and I don't, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so, may I suggest that we set this aside for a moment and start to talk about the other two topics that
Yes.
we didn't have a chance to before. Okay, determine the salary rate.
I have a quick idea on this.
Sure.
So first and foremost, I want to recommend that we approach this with not necessarily a individualized contract. Certainly, I would be open if we get to the point where we're recruiting, but I don't want to recruit saying we're gonna recruit with a contract that will be negotiated between you and the board.
Yeah.
And that is a misstep I'd like us to fix. So I would like to propose that this position is subject to all the same benefits available in the personnel handbook. And not necessarily. So, I mean, salary aside, but benefits is worth a lot. I mean, benefits is 30% plus. So I want to say that we would recruit there. I'm not saying it wouldn't be open. There could be something extraordinary, but I would have that person bring that request to us and not us advertise.
Yes.
Are there-
Not starting the person out with full PTO like it was for Bryce Kelly.
Well, there have been
That's great.
several contracts I've seen since being here, yes.
That one bugged me.
And there.
And I loved it.
There were just things that get negotiated, I think, a township vehicle, a stipend, all these things. And even in negotiations that didn't result in a manager, back in the 2020 search that we did. There were just, I think with this level, especially if it's more of a quote, township manager type circuit that people are on, they're very accustomed to it. So I want to make sure that we offer the right level of benefits. I don't want to damp down our package so that we don't recruit somebody good. But I also want to make sure that we're not overextending ourselves.
So you're saying not to, you don't want to advertise for a person or in a contract negotiation if they come with it.
Yeah,
Or-
I would want to kind of advertise our current benefits package as is. And I'm hesitant to advertise, subject to negotiation. I mean, certainly it might be. I would need to know more about the market.
Why don't we, interruption,
Sure.
why don't we just say it's a non-contract position? Our benefits
Are good.
Are fantastic.
are stand on their own. The benefits here,
I agree.
we've got individuals here that, they might not like. Anyway, I think the benefits offered, stand on their own, and if we just say
I do
it's a non-contract position, they're an employee, and here's the handbook, and you're right, managers, which is, I think, one of your points earlier,
Yeah.
about people who come in from manager position, city manager and whatnot,
Right.
that their roles frequently do support having an automobile because they're out in the field.
Yep.
They're circling around and
Exactly.
they're checking this and checking that. They're like
Right.
zipping here, zipping there. But we've already declared this position is office-based.
Mhm.
So it fits in with what we,
We're a small geography.
right, jog, take our pathways.
We have a pathway, almost.
Yeah, look at them electric bike. No, I just think we go in with, it's not a contract position. That's where I come out on it. It's director of operations. And we're not asking you to go canvas our locations.
You, in the description of this, so at the top, under the title, you could put full-time regular employee.
That's
Great.
That's
That's
pretty self-explanatory. I think.
I think that's fine. Aurora, I know one of the things you had received during one of the discussions was a proposed salary range of 60 to 90, which I think is low.
60,000?
So two things, when this was being recruited, a few months ago-ish, it was indicated 60 to 90, but the
By whom?
By
comparables,
whom, yeah.
By whom?
Amy Sell. So that when she had the recruitment out there in her job posting, they did indicate 60 to 90. However, the comparables obviously are
This
higher.
was during the previous supervisors.
Back in September,
Okay,
October,
so
November.
this was the one that Will authorized on his own.
Right, a number of months ago that.
Okay,
that-
and I never looked at it, so I don't know what it
was he
said.
looking for? Or they,
60, it was township manager, 60, interim.
oh, interim,
Interim
oh.
Oh.
That's-
Oh, that was an hourly type thing,
Yeah,
that would
90
have
an
been,
hour, right.
60
Oh,
to
an
90 an hour.
Oh.
Oh.
You
were all
that
makes
makes
more
more
sense
I was
now.
gonna say Amy Sells, that doesn't sound like Amy.
But that was.
So
here, that's what I
100,
thought.
124, 800 to 187, 200.
Yeah,
I think-
no,
We're looking at an annual salary number, right? This
Right,
is an
right.
exempt position.
Right, right.
so
range.
currently our employees, Aurora, our highest department heads make what, like 103, 105-ish? I mean, we'd have to look, but I think between fire chief, utilities director, in the finance director world, it looks like we may, we'd have to be looking maybe 90 to 120, something like that. I don't know yet, and that'll come before the board. So I would think this would be around there or a little higher. What I don't want to see is something that's, times more than our highest paid department head, but it is appropriate to have some space between them and their subordinates.
And of their subordinates is, I don't know their numbers, but probably utility
Utility,
director,
highest paid,
you get
yeah.
out to essential services, so,
Yeah,
so your essential
Salary
services.
was 97. That sticks in my head.
so I'd have to pull up,
He's I think he's from 102.
Yeah.
yes,
Higher.
yeah, we'll have the full.
Yeah,
Full list
okay.
that we can share
But
out.
as a going in, I think if I understand Jessica, it's that there's some amount above their highest paid subordinate,
Correct.
some number.
So let's say ballpark 105 for utilities director, and I'm just ballparking it, that may not be totally accurate, but after the COLA. Now, the only other one that's highly paid, close to that, is the fire chief, which is currently not being supervised, but I think the fire chief is about that amount.
Okay.
Again, I didn't bring this data,
Right.
and I'm not trying to get into all the details, but I'm just thinking that the salary should be above that. And Aurora, is there sort of a, what's your advice on the percentage of space between a supervisor and their subordinate, if there is any?
Yeah, I would say that there's different, people would answer differently on that. So that might be something that I should maybe look into a little bit more. Cause you don't want to go real low, but, you also want to stay within what you had indicated regarding the salary, the position.
Let's say probably, just coming from like a
7?
Maybe some.
7, 10,
Yeah.
7
That's
to
what I was
12
thinking.
would sort of be what I would expect. The other thing will come in if we ever, the board has to adopt a couple different things. If we do it, eventually adopt COLA with different factors. for
Like an incentive
performance
program, like pay for performance.
reviews. I
Yeah.
love it, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Over time, we'll get there. But that's something to keep in mind too.
Right.
Because then you could end up with a higher performing subordinate versus a lower performing higher up, and then their salaries start to equal
Yeah.
out, which is Hopefully performance based.
Yeah.
But there certainly are places and reasons where a subordinate would make higher.
Absolutely.
This one though, going in, I don't think we want to establish that going in, that they make less. You know, essential services and things like that are risk, responsibilities and risks that they carry, the things.
I agree with you.
So do we have a,
So it doesn't necessarily have to be, but just, yeah.
But I think we're having a difference.
do we have a potential range what we might ponder from now till? You started to say 110 to something,
I think,
or Ryan, did
Right.
you?
I could see this position, sir, with the finance director and the other people that they supervise. I think it could see. I would say somewhere between 110 and 125. That seems. reasonable.
I think that's reasonable. I think we could, you know,
We could.
the
also
range
put out-
could even be broader, but I think that's a good target.
Mhm.
well, any top range, if I'm someone looking at the job,
Oh, yeah, you go for the top.
go for the job. So I'd be cautious about listing anything higher than we're actually willing to give, because
Especially if we don't have like a fantastic set of applicants.
yeah, because you know, you ask for, as Kathleen said, you ask for top.
Right, I mean, and anybody, you know, is gonna ask for more if they want to, even if it's not.
Right,
So,
they will,
fine.
that's,
fine.
and that's their
The nature
right
of
and
negotiation.
prerogative to ask for.
So should we just have one number then? Then they can,
Well, we're, maybe with how we advertise, but I think for positions and like, and I guess Romberg might inform this too, but like, we wanna have positions that have sort of a bottom and a top. And then the top's the top.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, the top's the top.
Generally, like in the federal government, all the GS steps have ranges, as Jessica said, and
The-
other than adjustments for locality, it is what it is
Yeah.
within the range.
I mean, that's
top
true
is
for
the top.
local government
It's
too.
also true for local.
Anybody.
Yeah,
You don't
and
bring the person in at the very top, because then
Nowhere.
why have that range then?
Right, if they're fully doing the job.
Up to mid typically.
Well, we could put that entry, you know, sometimes, you know, organizations just say, you know, you can only enter at step 1 or 2. I've seen that before. They might have 5 steps and you can enter at 1 or 2, but not 3.
and we can put a full, what's called full salary equivalent of what their benefits are. You put
Yeah.
in benefits are
The other thing that could be
are
cool about.
worth this amount of money.
Yes.
The other thing that'd be cool about the step thing is if you can only enter at step 1 or 2, and we can make it really clear what step 3 is and what the reward is for hitting step 3. But that also requires us to get that far,
Yeah.
which we can do, but I'm not
But
sure we're
that's
gonna
why
be ready in time for this.
classification is so important.
Yes,
But I think this range is fine.
It seems workable, I mean, for this
But
area, that's very
I-
competitive.
What I like about having a top, that it is typically used in government position, it eliminates anyone that is, they shouldn't apply if they want a lot more than that. They just shouldn't apply.
Right, and I think we could maybe, for information, like check the, you know, international manager
Right.
associations, these associations that have, you know, just to see if it's in the range. So we aren't requiring that the person lives close by. So,
Right, but
You
they
want
do
me to-
show up in the office.
right, but if they want to drive an hour to do it, that's on them, we're not gonna. So I think it's very
very many
fair.
employees that do that already. An hour, they live an hour away.
Right, but what I'm saying is, yeah, of course.
Yeah, we don't want the expectation that this is a remote job. We
Right.
never see the person.
Or that we're gonna pay them more to live here.
Good point.
That was my point.
Are they
I'm
gonna be,
not paying people more to live closer.
they're gonna be bound by the office hours though?
That's what,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know,
And we say,
I'm
Right.
just saying, that wasn't the case with the last manager.
That's, I thought what we clarified right off.
That's
is
a-
that-
Oh, I know, I mean,
Okay.
It's
Okay,
a good lesson.
and I do think with the exempt, and we need to be, I know we'll be updating our handbook language, but generally with this employee and other exempt employees, you work at least 40 hours. And I don't know how to say that without violating the law. I'm not making any laws or implementing anything right now, but when you're exempt, you work at least 40 hours. And I think in particular with this position, and I know we'll be dealing this with our other exempt, the section in our handbook, Aurora, but I really want all of us to just have our attention to that we need to clarify that organization-wide. And truly, we don't even have a real 40-hour week.
No, we know.
We have a
You don't.
37 and a half hour week.
I
And-
thought I was in France.
And we do benefits calculated on the 40. And so I say that explicitly, I say that to our staff, I've said it multiple times before, but we all need to be conscious of what the real numbers are.
as a taxpayer, I am
Yes,
quite generous.
yes, and we've
Absolutely.
improved some of it, but I think we have more improvement to do in the handbook.
Okay, so in this item, I think we have, maybe some validation from Aurora on that range, if you want to give us feedback.
Yeah, and I can just kind of search out there for something that's comparable or sounds comparable, but this seems reasonable if this is, if you want. Then we can also tweak it, you know, if it comes up, we can.
But this is pretty close to being ready for the board, I think.
Right.
What about the last part of this agenda, the method of recruiting and hiring item?
So my question is, why can't we do this in-house with our current staff?
I think we can.
I would be supportive of that.
And we're paying for MML and MTA and GFOA, and, you know, we can all use whatever professional associations we have to push it out.
this person will be interviewed by the board.
I would assume so. But we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one I was involved in terms of a process is that we had named a subcommittee, the board had named a subcommittee to do some vetting of it, narrow it down, and then the board dictates how many you want to narrow it down to. Because it then depends on how much time the board wants to get into public, because then you have to publicly interview them. So the candidates usually, and this can go in the posting, can usually be to request a private interview. So I think Aurora would know
Up
to
to
do
a
that.
certain, up to a certain point, though.
Well, but they have every right to ask for a private interview, because if they're leaving another job, they may not want.
Yeah, but once it has to do with the initial where you're going through, let's say there's 5 candidates and they've all applied, at that point, it can be private, but once it narrows it down.
A personnel or a subcommittee can still be private at that point. When it gets to the next or final, then it becomes actually OMA related, because then the whole board would be related. So, but what we did is name a subcommittee for that kind of vetting, making sure that they're meeting your qualifications, because if the person isn't meeting basic qualifications, investing,
Just move on.
move on,
Yeah, move
exactly, for everyone's
Yeah.
sake. Um,
I think
So-
hopefully that would also be helped by Aurora.
I was gonna say, Aurora does a
Okay.
pretty good job of doing that.
But,
yes,
but I see the point, the value.
but then the person feels that their future wasn't in the hands of one person and didn't get
True.
past one person. It's not about Aurora, it'd be, you know, it's.
About
Yeah.
some of the board.
Have a committee
Yeah.
review the.
And you just
and then-
don't need a lot, but you know, they say. And then you bring it to, you only raise it to the level of,
Yeah, well, but then that means the committee is narrowing down to one person.
no,
So
no,
you
not
don't-
one person, no, no, no. You would never
If we had,
bring
if
one
we had
person.
8 and we said we want 3 brought to us.
Oh, narrow down.
You narrow, yeah, you
Yeah,
narrow
okay.
down a group. I would never bring just one person.
No, and I would never
yeah.
even say bring us back 3, Ryan. I would say bring us back the set of people that meet these minimum requirements. However big that
Yeah,
set
whatever
is.
directions the
Yeah,
board wants
the
to give
board
to
would give
this little
clear direction.
subset. Yeah, you're really fun, because every interview will require the full board.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And inviting all the residents
And
to,
that's what we did with our fire chief. We had a good process.
so, but you want to make sure you're getting. Anyone can apply. I mean, that's it. Anyone can apply. And so you want to make sure your basic qualifications and are being met.
It's a very good point, because my brain was starting to go to, should we set a minimum number, 3, 5? It makes more sense to not eliminate a qualified person.
Mhm. And I want to note here that the supervision, and this came up, I think, when you weren't here at the last meeting, Judy, and I just wanted to close the loop. The supervision, I just want to say the one omission, not omission, but the change here would be that the fire chief would not be supervised by the director of operations, that the fire chief would report directly to the board. The HR generalist reports directly to the board. So that would be a change from what we had
What we
before,
had
but yeah, which I think is good and I support
We
that,
don't
but
have the fire-
Yes, that's been revised since the last meeting.
Yeah.
I thought we took fire out.
Yeah, we did.
we did.
That's
And
what
I
you
just,
just
I just
said.
noticed that, and
Recapping that
I'm
for me.
confirming because I think Jillian or somebody else brought it up at the last meeting, like, why not the fire chief? Why is the fire chief not reporting to this position? And I thought it was something that we talked about at a prior meeting where,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with that, Jillian.
With,
The fire chief reporting directly to the board, not to the director of operations. I am
yeah, but
comfortable
I also
with-
think that our enterprise utility should report to the board as well, because, yeah, that's, you know, it's similar to the fire department in a way that it's one of, well, actually, we need water and sewer. We don't have a choice. We have to. But, you know, that's that whole department reporting to this director of operations. So that's why, yeah, and I know we talked about it the last time that the fire chief, and why is the fire chief just reporting directly to the board again? And Judy wasn't here, so this is a good,
Yeah. I mean, I think, I wasn't here for the initial conversation, but I think part of it is, I mean, fire department is township wide. I mean, both are critical infrastructure, both water and sewer and fire, but fire is township wide. And fire also is more than the utilities department. Fire has its own command structure, bound by its own union. In an emergency, the fire chief frankly doesn't need us. He's supposed to advise us. He's supposed to, but if there's an explosion or something, it's on, the fire chief is following all of the rules and regulations mostly prescribed by the state. Certainly, if there's an emergency, they'll activate the emergency plan with you, as supervisor, in coordination with the county. But the regulations and rules and requirements are largely beyond this township board. Versus we make all the rules and requirements for our water and sewer system.
Right.
Well, sort of. I mean, we do, but the state mandates quite a bit.
Okay, for the sake of time, I'm gonna suggest that we pause there. Let's determine the next meeting. And hopefully we can get this wrapped up, maybe at the next meeting.
Sure. So we have a standard meeting on Mondays? Is that
Yeah,
what we
next
decided?
Monday.
It's not, it's literally next Monday is
At-
closed. So, I mean, if you wanna do it on Tuesday.
Well, we're all exempt employees, so we could all.
Yep.
I'll say Tuesday is a possibility. The only thing currently on the calendar is the management meeting this week.
Say that again, Ryan, I was
The
not paying
21st?
attention.
Yeah.
Tuesday, the 21st, there's a management meeting here that generally starts at 1:30.
Now, what does a management meeting mean?
Department heads, Christy leads it.
Okay,
And we could
Thank
start
you.
at 2:30.
So that's enough time for the prior meeting.
Yeah,
what day of the week, what day did we say?
I mean, we could even
21st,
do your Outlook,
Tuesday.
Kathleen.
Sorry,
We could even do put you on for Outlook.
for that meeting? Yeah, I'm open for anything.
Okay.
So
whatever-
Tuesday, the 21st at what time?
2:30,
Okay,
okay, works for most people in this room at this moment in time.
And I just like to flag for coordination, not only, you know, when we bring this to the board and the board considers this, I really think we need to concurrently repeal that section of the Code of Ordinances, which I'll take responsibility for bringing when the board is ready. But also, Aurora, I would like us to make the appropriate adjustments to the fire chiefs agreement. At the time that the fire chief was hired, he was hired under individual contract with the board. In fact, the benefits available under our existing handbook are better than what he has, and I think it was a oversight. So would ask you for your recommendation around that, Aurora.
The topic that we covered just before going to about our next meeting is about chief reporting. I think maybe if Aurora, I don't, or someone else, to ask the chief about what kind of support or relationship he, it's not like his choice. I don't want it to be like his choice to choose, but the support, what kind of support does he rely on from the staff and from this position to see if he would get enough support by being a board direct report? Because you give up. When you are a board direct report, you give up a certain amount of direct support from Christie, you give up coming to you, you give up a little bit at the same time, even though you say, oh, I'm now free from that.
I can actually speak to. that a
Oh,
little bit.
okay, please.
So when I started in September, it's kind of cute, really. One of the first things Andy said to me, he's like, I'll be fine, Christy, don't worry. And it's pretty much been that way ever since. So he has not, other than some of the grievances which he's had to let me know of. Other
But the
than that,
grievance is.
No, I know.
straightforward,
I'm
since
just-
it's
I'm just
contract.
saying,
Yes,
personally,
okay.
I would,
So
I
does he
feel it's
rely
handy.
on any of the staff members for?
no.
Just function. So the chief, and I've had that conversation, you're asking Aurora to have it, and Aurora should be the one to have it, but I've had that
I just
conversation
wanted
with
to share
with
that.
the
Oh,
chief
that's great.
in the past about, because I said that this idea had come up and I asked him what he thought. He was very supportive of, reporting to the board. He he relies on, you know, for a treasury to take in the fee payments, for finance, for financial reports. Sometimes I think consultation on HR, on IT. I mean, so the functions he
Yeah,
interacts with, but I haven't seen him, you know, and
No, there-
certainly he'll dutifully report to whomever he needs to, but I've
Correct.
never found that he needs it. And I even supervised Andy for the first year.
True.
In between when Jack was supervising utilities and I was supervising Andy, and it was just
Okay,
check-in and facilitation of operations, but no, I mean,
okay. Okay,
yeah, I felt even when he was reporting or going to Jessica at that time, it was very minimal and Jessica felt very confident about his ability
okay, and
with his
given that,
own judgment.
okay,
Like-
and given that we've got a big project coming up for fire.
I mean, he also has Terry now too, in that
but
respect,
that's huge.
Yeah,
so,
but this new project is huge. It involves
right,
Ryan collecting taxes and managing that money and the bond. So there's, you know, quite a number of things
Yep.
that he's gonna need this township to do.
Yep,
And what kind of support is he gonna get relative to overseeing? Because we'll probably contract out overseeing, you know, the architect is gonna be an outside architect, the outside building people and contracting. So will we be relying on resources from here to,
So,
I think,
Okay.
I think to Jessica's point, I think what was mentioned is that Chief Hood definitely utilized the support of all of the departments that
Okay.
help support the fire department, just as many of the departments here support other departments internally, be it IT supports me, but I also support IT by collecting taxes. So there's a symbiotic relationship between the different people.
okay,
Chief Hood, I think, does an outstanding job of it because he has a lot of management experience. That's not diminishing anyone else, but
No.
he does a good job.
yeah,
And he just, I think because he has a number of years of experience, he doesn't have sometimes as many questions or things that come up, but what he does, I think he seeks out any advice he needs. from
okay,
anyone.
but I'd like him to, I mean, that's what, with this building.
yeah, this,
I
I
This
do want to,
building is new, is like big
Oh, yeah.
for our township.
Absolutely.
And so I don't want him bogging you down as a treasurer,
No,
you
Yeah.
down as a clerk, while we put in a lot of money into this.
Judy, I've had some thoughts about this, and I think as we get closer, I actually think it would make sense for the board to assign like a couple people to kind of alongside him with the project, because when we did the rehab of the fire station, so certainly, yeah, could be. I mean, I think that, you know, there's the finance side of it, which, you know, support when we worked on the rehab, but honestly, who we had really supporting the chief and the builder was our former supervisor, Jack Knowles, who was like very, very, very involved in the rehab over there. And that was a really helpful function that he played because he happened to have that outside expertise of how to know how to do that stuff. It was like his interest
Okay,
and
'cause I
expertise.
think we are
So,
gonna need.
I think we are
something.
gonna need somebody, because the chief, what I have found is, you know, he needs a little bit of just a touchstone to kind of know like how things are going. And Joyce and Jan Culbertson and I and the chief were appointed by the board before to go through the project planning to come up with the architectural estimate. What I would assume is, once we get to that point, that the board should appoint another little working group to be that kind of.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to look ahead, is that he's not left out.
No,
Because I want to give him the support he needs without bogging down his fire chief responsibilities.
exactly.
And that this building can go up without impacting
Yeah.
delivery of essential
And we haven't
services.
put a building up, right?
Right.
In decades.
I might suggest.
just time
put-
check, we're at
Put this
3:30.
as a side, Kathleen, and we can take this to the side because.
Well, what I suggested, it's a board agenda item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did need to go need.
Okay, so
Point.
moving along,
Yes.
Public comment.
we're at public comment. Do we have any one in.
Okay, let's see. We have Pam Boyd. Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you. In late November, I had a conversation with David Rowley, telling him how happy I was with this board. He was arguably the most knowledgeable outside person who came into our local government in my 5 years of involvement. Mind you, at that time, I was extremely happy with this board. His final comment to me was the need to establish a permanent manager position. It is needed due to the size and complexity of the township. At this juncture, my respect of knowing what this township needs is in Rowley's comments. I think it's time you consider bringing in Amy Sell to get a feel for the marketplace and what is trending with what you have crafted with your needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam. Next up is Rob Pattinson. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. You just had a very interesting conversation about Andy's reporting structure and his success and his skills. I think if you were to talk about Brandon McNeil as utility director in the same vein, and if he wasn't dealing with the interference that he is, I think you would have the exact same conversation about Brandon McNeil. Our question and answer session on Thursday a week and a half ago, and then the tour a week and a half ago, showed that he is incredibly capable. And I would suggest that you have the same conversation about Brandon McNeil that you just did about Chief Hood. I agree with Pam and David Rowley that this township desperately needs a manager. And the last week has demonstrated that Scio Township is a political quagmire. And we need someone who understands a political quagmire situation and doesn't get trapped in the politics that are happening and can avoid the potholes. And bringing in someone who doesn't have experience in municipal government, I think would be a mistake, because the politics alone could absolutely derail their efforts. And so we need someone who has the experience to avoid those potholes. One thing you didn't talk about today that you established last week is that Christy Aiken is now truly the interim administrator, and you need to pay her to do that job. You have assigned her multiple supervision duties now that were not part of when you described her as office coordinator plus or office coordinator 2.0, whatever that description was before. That no longer applies. She is now the interim administrator, and she is making less than half of what the previous manager was making. So you need to significantly increase her pay for the increased responsibility you've given to her. And that needs to happen yesterday, because the responsibilities have been piled on her in real time. Is Amy Sell still available to recruit for Scio Township? Have we not burned that bridge? Because there were some problems with that last time. And then finally, thank you for having a constructive meeting. I will say that the damage was done last week, and that continues, and we'll see how that continues tomorrow. But I'm impressed that all of you were able to recover from the damage of last week and work together this week. That shows hope, but you got a lot of work to do. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you,
Thank
Rob.
you, Rob.
So, anyone else?
Anyone else that would like to speak at public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. I see no hands raised.
Okay, I would like to address the Amy Cell question. When she was retained by Will's direction for an interim position, she proposed a number of candidates. I vetted those candidates, meaning that I looked at their background, I looked where they worked, I looked at what happened to them in their prior jobs. And one of those candidates had three positions at villages. Two of those villages terminated that candidate, and it's in the public record. I have it. It's likely that the third one also terminated that person, but not as forcefully stated for the public record. And to me, that's a huge fail on her part. I wouldn't normally bring this up, but I would not support Amy Sell's work at all because she is not vetting these candidates.
I just want to respond to the question of if she's still available. She has fulfilled the terms of her contract that we had and has been paid, I think, right, Aurora, the final payment. We held the check for a while, but she had met the terms and we fulfilled that. I think Amy has done some good work for us in prior recruitments, but for this recruitment, I think we should do it internally and see what we can get. I'm not against, though, reaching out for extra help if we find that we need it.
Sure.
How does it work?
Are you adjourned?
You made a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Was there, and there was no one against three. Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Thank you. We're adjourning at 3:43.
Thank you very much.